you are not afraid of eels. Maybe you find them a little unsettling, a little slimy, a little wrong in the way they move. But afraid? No. They're just long fish. Weird looking, harmless mostly. The kind of thing you see in a coral reef documentary and forget about by the end of the episode. That's what eels are at the surface. At 100 feet down, they grow longer. Their jaws get wider. Their eyes get bigger. At 1,000 feet, the jaw unhinges. The teeth curve inward, so nothing escapes. The body becomes almost entirely muscle and mouth. At 3,000 feet, the eyes disappear entirely and something else appears in their place. Something that shouldn't be there. At 6,000 feet, the eel stops looking like a fish altogether. It stops looking like anything with a name. And at the very bottom, in the deepest, darkest water on Earth, scientists pulled up something in a trawl net that they described in their field notes as morphologically unlike anything previously catalogued. The eel didn't evolve down into the deep ocean. The deep ocean took the eel apart, piece by piece, depth by depth, and rebuilt it into something else. And by the end of this video, you will never look at shallow water the same way again, because you'll know what's directly below it. Here's what makes eels uniquely fascinating and uniquely terrifying compared to any other ocean animal. Most deep-sea creatures are deep-sea creatures. They evolved down there. They've always been down there. The darkness, the pressure, the cold, that's all they've ever known. They're built for it from the ground up. Eels are different. Eels started at the surface, shallow reefs, coastal waters, river mouths, places with light and warmth and familiar ocean chemistry. And then, over millions of years, different eel lineages began moving down. Not all at once, not as a species, gradually, generation by generation, depth by depth, as if something in the eel's basic body plan made it especially suited to go deeper, to keep going, to find out what was further down. And every time a lineage moved deeper, every time the pressure increased, the light faded, the temperature dropped, the eel changed. Not randomly, not chaotically, systematically, as if the deep ocean had a blueprint, a specific set of modifications it makes to anything that enters its territory and stays long enough. Jaw first, then eyes, then skin, then the nervous system, then everything else. And the further down you go, the further from anything recognizable the eel becomes. So let's descend, depth by depth, eel by eel, and watch what the ocean does to something when it decides to remake it from scratch. At the surface, in coral reefs, in rocky coastal shallows, in warm tropical water, eels are already unusual. The moray eel, the one everyone knows, the one that lives in reef crevices and opens and closes its mouth in what looks like a threat display, but is actually just breathing. It reaches 10 feet, has 2 sets of jaws, the outer jaw you can see, and a second jaw inside its throat called pharyngeal jaws that shoot forward to drag prey inward once the outer jaw has grabbed it. 2 jaws, inside one mouth. The inner jaw fires independently like a mechanism. That's already wrong. That's already more than a fish should have. But the moray eel is in the sunlit zone. Warm water, reefs, known territory. Now go down to 200 feet, 300, 500. You start finding the conger eel. Larger, paler, less colorful. Color serves no purpose when there's less light to reflect it. The conger reaches 10 feet as well, occasionally longer, weighs up to 250 pounds. But what changes at this depth is behavior. Conger eels are documented hunters of other large fish. They've been recorded hunting cooperatively with grouper, a behavior so unusual in non-mammalian sea creatures that it confused researchers who first documented it. The eel flushes prey out of crevices. The grouper catches what escapes into open water. 2 completely unrelated species, hunting together, with apparent coordination. At 500 feet, where light is already mostly gone, where two animals that have no reason to communicate, no common language, no shared evolutionary history, figured out that working together produced better results. And then you go deeper, below 1,000 feet, and the surface world rules stop applying. Everything above 1,000 feet is still recognizably eel. Long body, fins, jaw, eyes, fish-like in the ways that matter. Below 1,000 feet, the ocean starts editing, and what it removes first is the part you'd miss most. Meet Eurypharynx pelechinoids, the gulper eel, also called the pelican eel, also called, by the researchers who first pulled one up from depth and stared at it, simply wrong. It lives between 3,000 and 9,000 feet below the surface. It has an eel's body, long, thin, tapering, and then there is the jaw. The jaw of the gulper eel is not proportional to its body the way a jaw is supposed to be. It is not a feeding tool attached to a head attached to a body. It is the majority of the animal. The jaw accounts for roughly 1/4 of the gulper eel's total body length. It opens to an angle that has no equivalent in any other vertebrate, wide enough to swallow prey many times larger than the eel's own body. The stomach expands to accommodate it. The entire anterior section of the eel, the jaw, the throat, the stomach, is designed entirely around the act of maximum consumption. Minimum body, maximum mouth. Because at 3,000 feet, food is scarce. Whatever passes by, whatever drifts into range, the gulper eel cannot afford to be selective, cannot afford a failed strike, cannot afford to let anything escape. So it built a jaw that doesn't miss. And here's the part that makes marine biologists genuinely uneasy. At the very tip of the gulper eel's tail, at the far end, opposite the jaw, there is a small glowing organ, bioluminescent, pink and red. It pulses. In total darkness at 3,000 feet, the gulper eel waves this glowing tail tip in front of its open jaw. It is luring prey into its own mouth. The tail is the fishing rod. The jaw is the net. The eel is the trap. An animal that is almost entirely jaw, using its own body as bait in total darkness, at depths that would kill almost anything else on Earth. And it's still recognizably an eel. Still has the body plan. Still has fins. Still has eyes. Small eyes. Reduced. Vestigial, almost. Because at 3,000 feet, eyes are becoming optional. Go deeper, and they disappear completely. Every animal that descends into the deep ocean loses its eyes eventually. No light means no need for eyes. Evolution removes what isn't used. This is standard, predictable, understood. But the deep-sea eels didn't just lose their eyes. Some of them replaced them with something that took scientists years to identify. And when they did identify it, they realized the eel wasn't navigating by sight anymore. It was navigating by something that shouldn't exist in a vertebrate animal. The snipe eel, Nemicthys scolopaceus, lives between 300 and 6,000 feet, one of the most widely distributed deep-sea eels on Earth, found in every major ocean basin. Its body is long, sometimes over 4 feet, and almost impossibly thin, like a strand of wire, like something stretched rather than grown. Its jaw extends into a long, curved beak that cannot fully close. The upper and lower jaw curve away from each other at the tips, permanently open, permanently gaping, like two hooks facing opposite directions. It uses this beak to trap the antennae of shrimp, threading through crustacean appendages in the dark, hooking them, pulling them in. A fishing hook that is also a jaw, that is also a face. But the jaw isn't what interests scientists most about the snipe eel. It's the lateral line. Every fish has a lateral line, a sensory organ running along the body that detects vibrations and pressure changes in the water, movement nearby, current changes. the bow wave of an approaching animal. In surface fish, it's present but secondary. Sight is primary. The lateral line fills in what the eyes miss. In the snipe eel, and in deep-sea eels generally, the lateral line is massively enhanced, enlarged, hypertrophied to a degree that surface fish don't approach. The entire body becomes a sensory surface, every inch of skin detecting pressure changes in the water, movement, displacement. The passage of prey animals through the water column, not seen, not heard, but felt, registered as a change in pressure against the body from inches away, or from feet away, or in some documented cases, from what researchers believe may be meters away. The eel doesn't see its prey. It feels the water move when prey swims past. It feels the displacement before the animal arrives. And in total darkness, at thousands of feet below the surface, this is more useful than eyes ever were. The deep ocean didn't leave the eel blind. It gave it a better sense. Everything so far is explainable. Extreme environment, evolutionary pressure, selective adaptation over millions of years. Strange, yes. Unsettling, yes. But within the framework of biology as we understand it. The last eel on this list is not within that framework. Or rather, it's at the edge of it, in a place where the framework gets thin. And the questions it raises don't have clean answers yet. The cutthroat eel family, Synaphobranchidae. Deep-sea eels found at depths ranging from 300 feet to over 16,000 feet. They have functional eyes, small, yes, reduced, yes, but present and functional. Unusual for their depth range, most animals at 10,000 feet have abandoned eyes entirely. The cutthroat eel kept them. Scientists debated why for years. At 10,000 feet, there is no sunlight, no ambient light of any kind. What use are eyes in absolute darkness? The answer, when it came, was bioluminescence again. The deep ocean is not completely dark. It is dark in the way that matters for photosynthesis, no usable sunlight. But the creatures living there produce their own light. Flashes, pulses, glows. The cutthroat eel's retained eyes are not for seeing in darkness. They are for seeing bioluminescence specifically, tuned at a photoreceptor level to detect the specific wavelengths of blue-green light that deep-sea bioluminescence produces. Seeing not the world, but the light-living things make in the dark. But here's where the cutthroat eel enters territory that doesn't fit neatly into any explanation. In 2018, a deep-sea survey in the South Atlantic recovered several cutthroat eel specimens from just over 16,000 feet, near the upper range of where complex vertebrate life has ever been documented. Their stomachs contained identifiable prey remains. The prey was identified as deep-sea fish, species that live at much shallower depths, 3,000 to 5,000 feet. The cutthroat eels at 16,000 feet were eating animals from 11,000 feet above them, which means they were ascending, hunting at multiple depth ranges, moving vertically through the water column across pressure differentials that should, by every model we have, be physiologically impossible to navigate rapidly. The pressure change between 16,000 feet and 5,000 feet is enormous. Ascending quickly should cause the equivalent of decompression sickness, should rupture cells, should be fatal. The cutthroat eels were doing it routinely. How? We don't know. We don't know how their physiology accommodates the pressure change. We don't know how deep they actually go. 16,000 feet was the depth of capture, not necessarily their maximum depth. We don't know how frequently they make these vertical migrations. We found the evidence in their stomachs. We don't have the explanation. And that specific combination, clear evidence of something extraordinary with no explanation for how it's possible, is exactly the sentence that keeps deep-sea biologists at their desks at 2 in the morning. Here's what the eels taught us. We assumed the deep ocean was a place of reduction. Less light, so less sight. Less food, so less size. Less everything, so less complexity. The eels proved otherwise. The deeper they went, the more specialized they became. The more precisely engineered. The more specifically adapted to conditions we barely understand. They didn't simplify going down. They refined. A jaw that becomes most of the body. A tail that becomes a lure. Skin that feels the water move from meters away. Eyes that see only the light that living things produce in the dark. A physiology that moves through pressure changes we cannot explain. Each depth didn't strip something away from the eel. Each depth added something we don't have a name for yet, something we don't have a framework for yet, something that makes the version from the reef, the familiar, slightly unsettling, easily forgotten reef eel, look like a rough draft. And the ocean goes deeper than 16,000 feet. Considerably deeper. The eels go with it. And what depth does to them beyond what we've seen, we haven't found out yet. Stay curious. Keep looking up. And the next time you look into the water off a pier, off a boat, off a reef, just remember, whatever's at the surface is the mild version.